Hey everybody, Nick here, and I just got a couple more thoughts to share about the new V-Raptor X. There's been a little bit more information that's come both directly from Red and from a couple of the very lucky people to get their hands on it early. So I wanted to go through that, a little bit of the info on the V-Raptor X itself, and second, discuss the concept of whether it's worth upgrading if you're a current V-Raptor owner like myself. Okay, so part one, we've gotten confirmation from Red that the extended highlights mode is indeed a kind of double exposure similar to their previous HDRX mode. So what I said in the first video on the V-Raptor X is correct. It's taking your initial exposure and then taking a second exposure right after that. I assume that's at a much faster frame rate in order to get a lower exposure. They didn't say that explicitly, but that makes sense. So let's say you shot at 1/48th of a second, which would be 24 frames per second at a 180-degree shutter. So you've got your 1/24th, and then you're gonna have something like a 1/768th frame right after that, which is 4 stops down from 1/24th. And so they take that much quicker frame, and I assume they're doing some clever blending, taking the highlights from that frame, not necessarily just summing the frames together, but maybe doing something a little bit more clever. And what that's going to do is make it really useful in most situations. Because in most situations, you aren't necessarily going to have a moving subject right in front of a really nuclear highlight. That would be somewhat unusual, but not impossible. So, as Red have warned, the place that you're most likely to see artifacts is in situations with what they call extreme motion or very fast moving subjects. So, if you were shooting, say, into a bright sky, but exposing for a subject in front of you in shadow, and that subject was moving very fast across that bright sky, that's when you're going to see artifacts. And in fact, the folks who have had the V-Raptor X, there's one who runs the reduser.net forum, his name's Phil Holland. He said that his tests in trying to break this mode and find its limitations were basically to run his hand in front of a light source as fast as he could, or medium speed, and see when those artifacts are going to occur. So, and his conclusions was that this is, something he didn't want to overhype, but that was probably going to be useful in a lot of circumstances. Personally, I plan on leaving extended highlights mode on for most of the shooting that I do. I think it's going to be a really nice sort of safety net in situations, especially if you're shooting in uncontrolled environments, if you're outdoors, if you're trying to shoot in natural lighting conditions where you don't have a lot of control. I think documentary shooters will get a lot out of this mode. People who really like filming with natural light or available light will get a lot out of this mode. And I'm just interested to see what it can do and where it can go. Purportedly, the fact that it's a global shutter sensor helps reduce the artifacts that you would previously see from HDRX. I'm not totally sure why that's the case. It may be that the artifacts from a rolling shutter get exacerbated with motion anyway, which is where extended highlights is going to be the weakest. And so that weakness is compounded, I suppose, by a multiple exposure. Not sure if that's the only reason or if there are other reasons why the global shutter sensor makes it even better now, but it is supposedly significantly better than it was previously. But we should note that Red's cameras have some of the fastest rolling shutters that exist. So here's my existing V-Raptor. This has an 8 millisecond rolling shutter, which is among the fastest. It's the third fastest that exists, I think. Sony is first, the Venice 2 with 3 milliseconds, and the Alexa 35 is second with like 7 milliseconds, or one of the Alexa cameras. Something like that. And then here we are with 8. And then really good consumer cameras have something like 15, 11 to 15. And then above that, it starts getting bad. You know, the DJI Ronin 4 has a 22 millisecond rolling shutter, and that's supposed to be a good action camera. But yeah, it suffers. So the point there was that, for me anyway, rolling shutter versus global shutter is not the reason I'm interested in the V-Raptor X. So let's get to the question, should you upgrade? Okay, here's my V-Raptor. I love what I can do with this camera. I have it rigged here in sort of this handheld mode with these two little grips that I 3D printed and this low profile monitor mount that brings the monitor down a little bit to kind of make everything a little bit more compact, lower center of gravity. I recently put a rail on the top of the monitor and printed a little custom holder for this mic setup from Zoom. It's a integrated recorder, so I can just snap it on the top of here with no cables, no nothing. And now with this like little thing that I've printed and this little small rig monitor swivel, I can put this mic right on top of the monitor, point it right at my subject, and I've got reasonably good 32-bit recording with a stereo shotgun mic with no cables, no compromises. It's fantastic. And it's not automatically synced in any way. I just usually go in and sync by the audio waveform, which I don't find to be too much of a problem. Maybe other people find that difficult, but I love this. I love that this camera can be rigged up with virtually no cables sitting anywhere. I mean, this is a powered, ready-to-go solution. Like, I can flip this switch right now and the camera turns on. I can even put a little focus motor over here. Boom. Okay, so there's one little USB cable powering the focus motor, but it still retains this just gorgeous, tiny, compact form factor. And this can be remotely monitored and focus pulled with no additional gear. The RED can wirelessly transmit its image at a reasonable speed for real-time focus pulling. So I love how compact this is already. It already has really tremendous dynamic range. It works with any lens pretty much that you want. And at the end of the day, the image is fantastic. And the upgrade fee is substantial. So should you upgrade? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you that I am absolutely upgrading immediately. Like, I've already booked it. I booked it for the earliest available date. I'm sending this camera off and getting the Raptor X in its place. Why? Essentially, the reason you get a cinema camera over a consumer-grade mirrorless is the latitude to make mistakes. You can get an absolutely beautiful image from any consumer-grade mirrorless camera to rival that of any cinema camera on the market, bar none. But if you take that consumer camera and you're off by a stop, or you can't control the lighting in your situation and you want to bring up those shadows a stop, even at one stop, you can start to see the difference between a consumer camera and a really powerful, really high dynamic range cinema camera. If you get to 2 stops, even 3, let's say, which is not at all unheard of for a dark scene, for shadow environments, for nighttime. If you're 3 stops down, the difference is extraordinary. It's huge. So the texture pattern of noise and grain on the camera that's filming me right now, the Canon R5C, is not the prettiest thing in the world. It's got a lot of chroma noise 2 stops down in the shadows. It's really blotchy. Even if you go a little bit more than that, 3.5 stops or 4, you'll start to see tons of horizontal lines where the noise is. So that's where I disagree with guys like Gerald Undone. He says he doesn't like latitude tests because he finds them unrealistic. But not only are they helpful in corroborating dynamic range findings, but they're also, in my opinion, a real-world example of how you push and pull footage. So for this kind of stuff that Gerald shoots for his channel, he's in a studio environment where he's not doing any crazy grading with the footage. But if you're doing creative narrative work, that kind of pushing and pulling occurs all the time. So I really care about those kind of latitude tests. And that sort of latitude to make mistakes applies to the highlights as well. If you go out and you shoot, you don't have the control, or you're not able to take as much time to really craft the shot in certain situations, like run and gun, or whatever it is, it's really nice to have a camera that you know is going to protect your highlights at the end of the day when you come back. You say, oh, I exposed for the face, but now the sky's kind of gone. You know, we end up with these kind of nasty whites just blowing out in the sky. Well, extended highlights mode in the V-Raptor X takes care of that for you. It gives you another 4 stops. It's going to be really hard to clip that camera. That's generally what people tend to say about the Alexa 35 is, unless you point it directly at the sun or a light fixture, it's going to have a real hard time clipping on you if your exposure is anywhere near accurate. So, and all those wonderful things that I said about the original V-Raptor apply to the V-Raptor X because it's the same body design. It has the same attachment points. So all these little pieces are just going to pop off of this camera, go on my V-Raptor X, and give me an extra 3 stops in the highlights and make me feel really, really happy. So for me, the upgrade fee is a total no-brainer. It's like the Alexa 35 gives you this latitude. If I wanted that camera right now, I'd have to plunk down more than 100 grand. Or I can plunk down the upgrade fee for the V-Raptor X and get that in a camera that works with all my existing lenses and accessories and batteries, and has a form factor that's a few pounds lighter than the Alexa 35, that's about half the size of the Alexa 35, and has a sensor that's twice as big as the Alexa 35. So I adore this camera, but it is going out the door as soon as Red mails me my upgrade ticket. That's gonna be all for now. Thanks for watching. These videos came out of order a little bit. I plan to publish sort of my filmmaking journey as I'm in the process of directing my first full-length feature. And I'm really gonna take the time to kind of document the process, mostly as a way to organize my own thoughts. But if any of you get anything out of that, then that's awesome. But really, it's sort of selfishly for me as a way to really better understand it for myself. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, stick around. I'm at the process in this filmmaking journey where I have my completed screenplay. I'm in the process of hiring actors and renting locations, and I'm really excited about this. So I hope that those of you who are cinema nerds and storytelling nerds like me might enjoy some of that process. And I will absolutely talk more about gear along the way as well. So if you're into it, come along this journey with me, like and subscribe. All right, see you later.